Okay, let's practice some very basic principles of what Illustrator can do with basic shapes. We're going to go ahead and go to File, New, and we are going to use one artboard. If you don't have that option, your Illustrator is a bit older, so you're going to have one artboard by default. We're going to do size letter, units are set to inches, and let's pick the orientation on the right. Let's ignore advanced and the bleed is set to 0. Once that's set, we're going to just say OK. We want to check our setup. It should have been set up already, so let's go ahead and double check. We have Control, Tools, Color, Layers, Navigator, Stroke Swatches. That's fine. CS5 has a bigger option here for stroke. This is an updated video, so don't worry, we're not really going to work with these arrowheads. We're going to use them for tag packs in other videos, but for now you don't need them. Let's begin by bringing in an image. So we're going to go to File, Place. We're going to go to 0202 and we're going to click on the JPEG, and that's our trims. We're going to trace these. I like to refer to this layer as if it's our original that needs some tape so things don't move around. So we're going to actually put a lock right here where there's an empty space next to the eye icon. Let's create a new layer, which I refer to as a separate sheet of paper. So I'm going to click on that. And before we move on, you are always in the layer that's highlighted by clicking on it. Let's double click on layer 1 and dim this image to perhaps 50%. And we can just click, make a check mark here, and then type in whatever percentage we want, so that we can then see the contrast between what we will put on layer 2. I'm just going to cancel because I double clicked by mistake. Alright, I'm going to zoom in with my navigator. Shortcut for that would be Control plus or Command plus on a Mac. And then I'm going to go ahead and use my very basic Ellipse tool. Now, make sure that you're looking at the tool palette as the same as I am, which is expanded to 2 columns, and it's just easier for us to see the same. And what we're going to practice first is how to reveal hidden tools, and that's kind of tricky in the beginning, but all it is, if you click on a tool, you first of all activate that new tool. When you see a tool that has a tiny little arrow on the bottom right, when you click and press down and hold, you reveal whatever's underneath it, and that's how you get to the Ellipse tool. Once there, let's practice a couple of times on how that would work. You would just click anywhere and then pull, like on the diagonal, let go of your mouse, and then that's your circle. You can immediately backspace on your keyboard to delete it, or you press one of our favorites, which is undo, Control Z or Command Z. Now let's do a couple of practice runs here by just clicking and dragging, clicking and dragging. And then we can either undo or, more importantly, learn how to switch to the selection tool, and then just click on these and press delete or backspace. Now the trick is, you probably felt already that sometimes you just click and pull and it's an oval rather than a perfect circle. So if you hold down Shift as you start dragging, you will receive a perfect circle. The trick here also is to let go of your mouse before you let go of Shift. Okay, so sequence, click and drag, add Shift, let go of the mouse, then let go of Shift. Once you have one circle, you can pull it over your button and see if it's the right size. One thing that's really important to learn is how to scale objects, so let's practice that. I always tell my students that our selection tool or Illustrator whispers certain tips to you. Let's look at these little whispers and their visual cues as to what you can do. Your selection tool has by default a little tail to it, and when we move it and hover over an object that we've created, you can see how the tail disappears. That means that you can now click and drag and move your object. It also has a bounding box. This bounding box lets us do a couple of things. One of them is called scaling, another one is rotating, and the way you know which function you are currently in without even having to switch the tool is just moving your mouse a little bit over that bounding box. And if you're over these tiny little squares that are centered and cornered, you can see how your tool once again whispers to you. So here, for example, you see a double arrow. If I was to pull now, I would scale my object. Here also, if I pull and add shift, it stays proportionate. If I go a little bit further out, you can see how I have a quarter circle. That means it would now, if I click and drag, allow me to rotate my object. So just kind of try out these different positions and just click and drag as you see them, and then always add shift to see how that feels. But the three basic functions other than selecting are moving, which is without the tail, scaling, and you have it at all of the corners and sides and middles of the sides, and then rotating, which you also have if you go a little bit further out on each of these positions. Okay, let's scale this. Click and drag from the corner perhaps and add shift until you feel that it's the same size, and then move it. Alright, as you can tell, we're now blocking our view of what's underneath here, and that has to do with the fill color that's currently in. By default, Illustrator will make it white. We can actually change that color quickly by clicking on any of these swatches. So right here, make sure your fill is on top. If it's not, just click on it. My goal is for us to set it to none so we can see through. And then let's practice putting some more little circles in here. Another trick for your tools, such as this shape tool, the ellipse tool, is that when you want to draw something from the center out, you can position your cursor in the center and then press Alt or Option, start pulling, and then add shift on top of that if it needs to be a perfect circle. But don't worry if that doesn't work for you, just click and drag. Alright, let's take that and Alt drag. And what Alt dragging does is, first of all, it gives you two arrows if you're on the part that you can pull on, and that then means it makes a copy. Now, one of the things to remember is that when we take the fill out, it is as if we're taking a plate and we're hammering the center out, so it becomes just like a big loop. And you're grabbing air if you're trying to click on the part where there used to be color. So you can only move an object that has a stroke from the actual part that prints, which is the black stroke, and the little center point right here. To try it out, you'll get the little hint that the selection tool will lose its tail, and that means you can now move it. If it's not, without the tail, you'll not be able to move your selection. So watch this, if I try and click and drag here, I just lose the object. Okay, let's put a color back on. Any color is fine. And you can see that obviously now that we're just practicing, that the color of the background still comes through. You could put a white in there. Let's go ahead and save this. So we'll go to File, Save As. Let's make it Trim Practice, a AI document. So make sure it's Adobe Illustrator AI. So we keep our layers and we keep our vector art intact, and then just say Save. I just happen to have a file that I'm replacing. So for you, just OK once. Version, let's keep it as the one that you have currently, which is probably CS4 or up. So I have CS5 here. These can all be checked, and then just say OK again.